Hello, my name is John Peace with the Rural Route Newsletter, and today I'm here with my co-host, Heather Riggs Moses. Heather, if you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your position with the Democrat Party.
I'm Heather Moses, and I'm a lifelong resident of Southwest Virginia and the chair of the Wise County and City of Norton Democratic Committee and a political science major. Politics and people are my passion.
They are, and your social media attests to that statement. Our guest today is Bruce Maple, Ford, Kentucky. Lord, I was going to say Ford Wise County. That's actually a local Ford, Kentucky. And Bruce, introduce yourself and start talking a little bit. We'll ask you some questions about Ford, Kentucky, but go ahead and do your introduction.
So I'm Bruce Maples. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and John and I hooked up a ways back about rural candidates and running rural people, and I was fascinated by his insights. We've been in existence now for 9.5 years, and we are the progressive voice for Kentucky politics.
What
Fantastic.
Bruce got one question for you. What was the trigger that got you into this? Because I know you don't do it for the money, because we ain't found no money.
No. Well, in Kentucky, we have our gubernatorial and state officer elections on a weird calendar. They are the year before the presidential elections. So in 2015, we had Democratic governors pretty much consistently. And in 2015, Matt Bevin was elected governor, and by some like 37 votes or something. But he was elected governor. The Democratic Party and the Democratic candidate did not do anything. I mean, we knew our candidate was going to lose. Anyway, I got so disgusted that in late 2015 and early 2016, I decided, okay, I've got to do something. And my original plan was to form an alternative to the Democratic Party. I was going to form a statewide organization that would, do what the Democratic Party needed to be doing. But we had a guy named Adam Edelin who actually ran for governor. And after he lost the primary, he announced about the time I started thinking about this that he was going to build a statewide organization. And Adam had money and name recognition and all that. So I stepped back and said, well, I can't do that. So I pivoted to writing, which I've been doing all my life, and doing journalism. And we're still here doing journalism 9.5 years later, and Adam's organization lasted about 9 months.
Wow.
So that's what we do. And that's why we're here. We combine what we say. Our tagline says objective news, effective policy, and progressive commentary. So that's what we try to do.
Well, put this way, you do some excellent work, and you're an excellent writer. So I got a question. We've touched base a little bit on this before. Your relationship with the Kentucky Democrat Party.
I have to
I
be,
see a smile. Okay.
well, I wrote a column, now I guess it's been 4 years ago, that basically I interviewed a bunch of people across the state that I knew were active Democrats and asked them their opinion of the party and what was wrong with it and so on and so forth. And I got more than you can imagine. I mean, just huge amounts of material. And I didn't identify any of them. I mean, it was all, most of them didn't want to be quoted because they were on the state central committee or they were actively whatever. But at the end, I said, it's a shame that all these people feel this way, but it really doesn't matter because the party is irrelevant. And that really tore it with Governor Beshear and with the party and with all those people. And so I've been basically persona non grata for a while, although it has changed a little bit with the change in leadership up there. Morgan Eves and I at least communicate and work together on some things. So I've been able to get an interview with the lieutenant governor and with other you know, people have tried for 5 years to get an interview with Andy Bashir and can't do it. So that's sort of the relationship. Now, my relationship with the local parties is fine. I've got a number of local parties that I do workshops for. I've spoken at their meetings. All that's fine. It's just, the place in Frankfurt probably doesn't, I'm not as welcome there, perhaps.
Well, Heather, talk a little bit about your background, your upbringing, what brought you to the Democratic Party, on a little bit of your background.
Well, I was raised in a very Republican family in the church and here in Wise County. My grandmother was Ann Riggs, and she was the chair of the Republican committee here for many years and raised tons and tons of money for the Republican Party and went to inaugurations. And I met lots and lots of politicians, but as I grew up and got older, she always dreamed of me going to college and getting into politics. But as a young person, that wasn't really what was important to me at the moment. As I have now gotten older, politics and history and government have always been subjects that I have been very interested in. And with the first Trump election, that really kind of pushed me to become outspoken and let people know that, I had left that party because their views don't align with mine. The support for women isn't there. All of the forward movement that we've made for equality, all that is on the line now. And now our literal democracy is on the line.
Mhm.
So it motivated me not only to get involved in politics here at a local level and obviously keep an eye on the national level at the same time, but it also drove me to go back to college and get my BS in political science.
Hmm.
Great story. And when Heather talks about her grandmother raising money, that was back when King Cole. You take in the 70s, 60s, late 60s into the 70s into the early 80s, our governor's races, you'd see half the campaign donations coming out of the coal fields for
Yeah.
the Republicans, and that was big money back then. And we talked a little bit with you before we started recording that we're excited about having Heather. We're excited about having that next generation of Democrats come up and into leadership roles, not just be part of
Mhm.
the party, but be part of the leadership and stuff. And I thought it really shone through in this past governor's election. You mentioned about Kentucky does it the year before. We just did it the year after Trump. And I'm ask you, Bruce, what was some of your observations from being a Kentuckian on our Virginia election? We were in the spotlight.
One of the things that really struck me about the Virginia elections was there were two things. One was the amount of energy across the state, not just in what you would call the normal places. I mean, I assume there's going to be lots of energy around, DC and that part of the state, Northern Virginia. But I mean, across the state, it seemed to me like people were really coming out of the woodwork and really getting involved. And it struck me that people were not ashamed to say, I'm a Democrat and I'm supporting Democrats. And, we've still got places in our state where people won't say that because they're scared to or whatever. So that was one thing. The other thing was the contrast, which was called out multiple times between your gubernatorial candidate and the New York mayor candidate. And they both won, and they won in their respective contexts. Somebody said, it might have been you, John, said, Spanberger wouldn't have won mayor of New York, and Mandami, or ever, I never can say the man's name, but would not have won governor of Virginia. But in their
Absolutely, that's
local
fair. That's fair.
in their local places, they fit,
Mhm.
and finding candidates that fit the voice and the context of where people live, to me, is just so critical. And Virginia did it, and good for Virginia.
I have to say, I agree with you 100% on that. But I do think that, I just want to say this, I think that one of the biggest reasons that more people are starting to identify with Democrats is because the working class has been left behind
Yeah.
by the Republicans. And, You may not like politics, you may not like one side or the other, but the vast majority of us are working class Americans. And the policies that we've been dealing with for decades now have done nothing for working class people.
Well, and it's on one level, it's really not about left versus right. It's about wealthy versus everybody else.
Amen.
And as much as I am glad to claim being a Democrat, we've been guilty of it.
Hmm.
And I trace it all back to a lot of it back to Citizens United. I don't think most Democrats really love having to kowtow to wealthy people to fund their campaigns. They'd rather do it with $20 donations from everybody in this, in their district. But because of Citizens United, you can't unilaterally disarm, as it were. And so Democrats have had to go out and have the fundraisers with the big donors and all that stuff. And I think as a result, they have largely lost touch with the working class.
Hmm.
We've seen that. Now, I have to say, where I am, there's a lot of union stuff here and a lot of union people. But even the union people, a lot of them vote for Republicans because, at least in Kentucky, I don't know if it's true in Virginia, but Barry Craig is fond of saying that the Republicans run on the 3 Gs: God, guns, and gays. And, they win on God, guns, and gays. And you could sit there and say, yeah, but they got their hands in your pockets, people.
Hmm.
But I think people are beginning, Heather, to see these wealthy people don't care about me, don't care about what I do. And we got to find some people who care about us.
Yes, and if we don't get big money out of politics, we're never going to be able to do that. I just noticed, I think it was yesterday, I was reading that the Wisconsin Supreme Court had allowed Elon Musk to continue to give out $1 million checks to would be Republican voters. So I agree with you 100%.
Bruce, I'm gonna step back a little bit on your statement talking about the energy across Virginia, even in the rural districts. And I'll tell you what, Heather, I'm gonna let Heather chime in on this, but I cannot stress enough to anybody viewing this what a difference it made in this election cycle to run a delegate in every district in Virginia as a Democrat or
Yes.
have a Democrat candidate. For the first time in almost a decade, for me and for Heather too, I didn't have to drive 3 hours before I saw a Democratic billboard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in rural Virginia, it was that bad. And talk about that energy. For the first time in a decade, some of these districts actually had somebody they was a local guy or local woman that they could vote for. And Heather, I'll let you chime in on this because she was a part of campaigning for some of our local delegates, and that helped the statewide races.
Well, I mean, granted, we're not the blue Southwest Virginia we were during the Boucher years, but if you're not going to put a dog in the race, so to speak, how do you expect to ever grow your numbers anywhere? So, I mean, a lot of these Republicans, and I even noticed this past election, a lot of the big signs for Winsome Earl Sears and her lieutenant governor and AG, you didn't even see a lot of those signs go in the ground till a day or two before the election. They don't even feel like they need to campaign here anymore.
Right. Well, here's another thing that I think you've got to convince the state party and the state level candidates about. By putting candidates at the local level, you give Democrats a reason to go to the polls. And by the way, while they're there, they'll vote for your gubernatorial candidate.
Yeah. And give you, for example, locally here in Wise County, Harris only pulled 17% of the vote. Okay. Our recent governor's election, we increased that by almost 7% by having local people run. And we actually had the most votes for a Democrat governor since 2009. So that
And it's
shows
because you had people running.
Yes. And also, and I'm gonna go ahead and plug them. I'm gonna let Heather plug them too. Dr. Fergie Reed Jr. and his efforts to get people to run in these rural districts, and not only run, just got them some basic funding to get their name out there. And
Mhm.
I mean, I'm talking about we had delegates that only had ten to $15,000. I think we had a few that had $20,000 in a campaign going against incumbents that had a $500,000 to 1.3 million
Yeah,
Mhm.
in their campaign coffers. But even that 10 to 15,000, it was the best money the Democrats could spend because you got that return. I mean, where else could
Return on
you spend
investment. Yes.
$20,000 and get a bump in the votes? And that was the reason why Spanberger could go to bed early on election night and know she had it in the bank.
that's right.
So,
Well, another thing that has always fascinated me is when you take the amount that a campaign spent and divide it by the number of votes and see, okay, what did it cost us to get these votes? Well, I suspect, I haven't done any math on it, but I suspect in Virginia, you spent a lot less per vote than some of those Republicans with their millions. Yeah, and the other thing that fascinates me is the short-sightedness, not fascinates, but maybe horrifies me, is the short-sightedness of some of the leaders in the party about this whole rural thing. Now, in Kentucky, there's a person who does a podcast, or two people who do a podcast called My Old Kentucky Podcast. And Robert Connie is one of the two people. Jasmine Smith is the other. Robert's a big data nerd. He does a lot of data analysis. He always runs an analysis after the election. And he pointed out, and I think he was correct, that if he was in charge of the Democratic Party, Louisville and Lexington are going to be blue. You're not worried about that. He said what you need to do is put your next level of focus on every small town that has a college. Go to
Mhm.
every town that's got a college and put money in there. And then he said, then you need to go to these rural county parties and these rural candidates. And for heaven's sakes, give them access to the van for free or something. You know, you don't need to give them each $20,000, but it's crazy to charge them thousands of dollars for van. That's nuts.
and Bruce, let me plug for the viewers exactly what VAN is. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's voter information on
It's Voter
polling.
Access
Yeah,
Network, I think.
network. Yeah.
But
So
it's the Democratic voter info file, you know. So yeah, a few years back. Now it's not true now. I'm pretty sure. I don't know this for a fact. So if somebody wants to fact check me, they can. I think that Governor Beshear went to the party and said, because they were charging people, I want to say $5,000 or $10,000 or some crazy number. And he went to them and said, no, you're going to do it for $500 or whatever it was. I think it was $500. And he said, we're not going to have this. So good for him, that he did that. But we still, so in Kentucky, the western part of the state, west of I-65, out that way is west. That's considered Western Kentucky, west of 65. And then a part of that is called the Purchase. And the Purchase was called the Democratic Gibraltar because for 100 years, it was Democrats completely, right? You didn't even run as a Republican. You didn't have a shot. Well, of course, that's fallen apart over the years, and it finally fell completely, I think, in 2016. I think that west of I, for the state house and state senate, we have two candidates right now. Now, the filing deadline is January 7th. So, maybe a few more will pick up, but we should have like 30.
Mhm.
And this is a combination of local parties that have been left to die over the years.
down the vine.
Yeah. And not really pushing out there. Now, what's interesting is you were talking about young people. And Heather, it gives me great joy to see your face here on this video cast and realize that we've got some young people stepping up. That's what's happening, John, in Kentucky. we've got a lot of local parties where the old farts like you and me had been doing it for years and gave up, basically. And we've got young people. We just elected the youngest state chair, I want to say is 19.
Wow.
State chair, local party chair.
Local part, yeah.
County party chair. And we ran a story about it on our website. So we've got a lot of young people jumping in, and young adults, I guess is what I should say. The Jefferson County Party for years, that's Louisville, was just all these old, gray-headed, been there forever, I only hold this seat so I can put it on my resume kind of people. And about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, all these young progressives got together and moved them all out, got elected to the state, to the county party. And man, they are doing some wonderful work.
Well, you and I, right before we started recording, talked a little bit about social media. I'm going to get Heather to talk about her social media, about how things have changed. When I first can remember politics, if you were a candidate, you raised a little bit of money, you went and bought some yard signs, you bought a few ads for the local newspaper, and you might cut some radio or TV ads. And that was it. And that would get you in front of a lot of eyeballs. But this is a different time. People have cut the cord. They don't read newspapers, don't buy newspapers. They don't watch regular traditional TV like they used to. And we were talking about influencers and shorts. I'm going to let Heather talk a little bit on what she does on social media and on her personal social media. Yeah.
Well, now I am having to get ready to start all over from scratch on TikTok. And occasionally you will run into that on TikTok, especially since it was bought by, some Trump sycophants. But Instagram, now I used to really struggle with Instagram because it seemed like they wanted to try to ban you for 24 hours, 48 hours every time you did anything or said anything that was, the least bit political one way or the other. And I noticed in the presidential election of 2024, it was like that all the way up to election day. Then after election day, it was like the Wild West.
Hmm.
And it still is. And you can go on there and I'm telling you, pretty much say anything you want to, and they won't ban or block you. But I have been trying to build up a presence on social media. I started out through a Not Red 2024 and then changed my handle, as you say, to Democratically Inclined. And I have about right under 4,000 on Instagram right now. And so it goes through periods where it will grow a lot and it'll kind of slow down. I need to spend some more time making some more new videos. But I feel like there is such a gap where, the Republicans controlled the media since the 80s, whether it be TV, radio, and they have stepped in when it comes to social media, podcasting, YouTube. You have to meet the youth where they are, and they are online. And we have to come up with our own people to fill in those holes. Because if we don't, all they're going to see is the right wing Fox News type style social media accounts, and they don't get the facts or the truth. We have to step up as Democrats and try to fill that hole, I think, online.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, I need to give you some money and have you help me. I tried doing TikTok and I got made so much fun that I stopped. People are like, who is this old guy and why isn't he dancing? Because it was all about, why aren't you you should be dancing. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. But I absolutely agree. My readership on the website it skews older. I mean, I know that from surveys I've done. And I would give anything to get a bunch of young people involved, and young adults, I should say. Compared to me, everybody's younger, but young adults involved there. I have to ask. So when you do, let's talk Instagram. So you do a short video. Is that what you do for Instagram?
Instagram limits you. If your video is over 3 minutes on Instagram, it won't be recommended as a reel to share.
Okay.
So the only people that will have access to it are your followers. and
So
then they can choose to share. But now TikTok, you can talk as long as you want to,
yeah.
but
Well, I
people
don't dance,
usually
so
tune
that's the
out
problem.
after the first minute or two.
So when you go on to Instagram, you're doing less than 3 minutes. So you're doing what, an editorial? You're doing sort of a commentary on the news or something?
Different topics, whether they be current event type of political topics, whether it be policy topics, when we were dealing with the big beautiful bill, I did multiple TikToks on that and the devastating effects it would have, and even tried to break that down even further. But yeah, I originally started it out as a way to educate because there's so much misinformation, disinformation, and lies that I felt like people needed somewhere to go to hear the truth. And so I just started by either tackling whatever current news we were dealing with out of the White House or Trump himself, or a basic political policy topic that was, everybody's minds at the time. Just tried to educate. That was my whole mission. That's why I started it, was
Hey,
was to educate.
Heather, hate to cut you off right there, but I want to interject there. Bruce, the only reason I knew Heather was a Democrat or Democrat leaning was
Um,
because of her videos. Oh, I knew her family is Republican. And that's tell the story. That's when I approached you about coming to the part yeah.
Yes, I had been screaming from the rooftops on Facebook for years. I apologize if you hear that. Apparently have two cats fighting. But I kept my Facebook profile private. I am also a licensed real estate agent, but I was trying to find people in Wise County that were like-minded like myself.
Mm-hmm.
You would think, growing up with political background that I have, and you know going to school for politics and political science, that I would have known that somewhere we had to have a local Democratic committee. But I had searched and searched online and had such a hard time finding anybody until luckily John found me. And I often joke that as much as I love our meetings and what we do and can get accomplished, it's also therapy to me to be able to go to a
Mm-hmm.
meeting room once a month and be in a room with like minded folks that I can speak my mind to and not feel attacked before I leave. I'm so thankful that he reached out to
Yeah.
me.
And I think the big part, and of course, our local committees are getting more active on social media. And it's not always about it's letting that voter know there are Democrats here. And guess what? We're okay people. Get to know us. I mean, it's not all about bad mouthing Trump and social medias. And, when you go a decade without seeing a Democrat run for office and not have contact with them, not see them in the paper and stuff, I mean, they just associate the Democrat Party with California or New England. And so getting on social media and go, hey, that person's just like me. They work a job like me. They talk like me. They speak like me.
Yeah, I think that's all very accurate. And the more we can have the local parties be present and be seen. I have to say, I want to call out one group. We have a number of indivisible chapters in Kentucky, and I'm sure you probably do in Virginia as well. But we have one, Four Rivers Indivisible. They're over in West Kentucky now, over in that deep red part that one of my writers calls Trumpistan.
Trump.
They're over there in all of that. They don't care. They have had 20 rallies or protests since the beginning of the year. And they go to Comer's office regularly and show up in chicken suits because he's chicken to hold a town hall.
Wow.
So,
We got one of those too.
Yeah.
and I think that the combination of social media and doing things like that to let people know, hey, we're out here.
Hmm.
We exist. I think those are all really critical.
Well, Bruce, I promise I'd keep you about 30 minutes. I want you to plug Forward Kentucky, and I'll let all the viewers know I'm gonna put your links in the YouTube video commentary and stuff so people can find you. And where can we find you?
So the website is forwardky.com, forwardky.com. We are on YouTube at Forward Kentucky. We're on Blue Sky. if you're on Blue Sky. We're on a couple of other social media things. And I guess we're going to have to get ourselves back on TikTok or Instagram or somewhere. And the website is open. There's no paywall on the content that is out there for the public. We do have some newsletters that you have to pay for, but the general content is there. And we have a free membership. All you have to do is provide your email address, and for a free membership, you get our weekly newsletter.
Cool.
Well, Bruce, appreciate it very much. Keep up the good work. Heather, great work as
Yes.
usual. So glad you could join us. And till
So
next
nice
time,
to meet you, Bruce.
Yeah.
It's good to meet you, and I will go to Instagram when we finish right now. I'll go there and find you and follow you.
Awesome. Thank you. I look forward to it. You all have a great evening and happy holidays.
Yeah, you
And
too.
to
Merry
all of you.
Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas.